Fiber is not your friend. Let's talk a little bit about what I mean by this. So, this week we're dropping a podcast with Coach Stephen Thomas. It's a long overdue podcast. He's someone in the sort of keto carnivore space that I hadn't come across until fairly recently. I'm hoping to have him on, several times. I think it's a great discussion. Check out it. You can check out the whole podcast on YouTube. It'll be on Spotify and Apple Podcasts and all, maybe next week. So in that in that podcast interview, he tells a couple of really interesting stories. One interesting story is the story of his mother, who died of colon cancer when Stephen was fairly young. I believe Stephen was in his 20s, early 20s, right? So maybe she would have been in her mid to late 40s, right? Something like that. And it was a tragic story for a number of reasons, but it was super tragic because here's the woman who's, diagnosed with colon cancer. She's in pain every day. The symptoms are getting worse. And what is she told? Increase fiber. She was already eating a quote unquote healthy fiber rich diet before the diagnosis. And then after the diagnosis, she's told to increase the fiber, increase the fiber. Every time she increases the fiber, she gets sick. And ultimately, she ends up passing away. Now, if I tell this kind of anecdote, the scientists among you will get a little bit cross and say, well, you can't draw conclusions from one particular anecdote. Yeah, that's true. But, there's so much evidence that fiber is not the health food that it's cracked up to be. So what do I mean by so much evidence? First of all, what is fiber? At bottom, what is fiber? What does it do? Fiber is an indigestible polysaccharide. You can Google that, see what the definition of fiber is. I've given you the definition. Fiber is an indigestible polysaccharide. Let's start with the second part of that. Polysaccharide. What is saccharide? Saccharide is sugar. So what is poly? Poly is many. Many sugars layered on top of each other. That's a polysaccharide. There's two kinds of polysaccharides. There's your starches and there's your fiber. Those are the only two kinds of polysaccharide, at least that I'm aware of, right? For disaccharides, those are different. So sucrose is the most famous disaccharide. Lactose is another disaccharide. Sucrose is one glucose and one fructose, right? This is sort of the base sugar basics 101. Now, when you have an indigestible polysaccharide, what does the body do with it? The body doesn't digest it. And this is why people who are wearing, for example, a colostomy bag as part of a medical procedure where they have to get part of the colon removed or whatever, when you can actually see sort of the fecal matter coming into that bag, you'll see whole bits of broccoli. You'll see whole bits of pear. You'll never see a whole bit of meat because that's digested where it's meant to be digested in the small intestine, in the upper intestinal tract, right? So it is not digestible. You're not eating it, right? Then we're told, well, it's not about you eating it. It's about the bugs in your lower intestine being able to eat it. Okay, if that were true, by the way, there's a great video by a guy called Nick Norwitz this week that's explaining fiber in a little bit more detail. He's giving the references in the studies. If you doubt my footnotes, you can check out his footnotes. But there are studies showing that if you put people on a very low fiber diet, called a low FODMAP diet or a carnivore diet or whatever, their gut does fine. In fact, the diversity of the gut microbiota, which is the only way we measure the health of the microbiome in the gut, that diversity stays the same, or in some cases, it even increases slightly, right? So anyone who's telling you it's good for the gut doesn't know what they're talking about, right? So it's not good for the human, it's not good for the gut. And anecdotally, because we haven't really tested this there is one RCT, randomized control trial, that we can mention, where they had people who were on a very bad, it's not exactly a randomized control trial because there's no randomization element. It's the same people put on three different diets: a high fiber diet, a low fiber or a lower fiber diet, and a no fiber diet. And these were people with really bad constipation. And we find when we put them on the no fiber diet, when they went from the high fiber diet to the low fiber diet, their constipation got better, significantly better. But when they got on the no fiber diet, the constipation went away completely. And remember, these were people with really bad chronic constipation, serious, issues, blood in the stool, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So we know from that trial that trial shows that, it's not good for digestion. Fiber is not good for digestion, at least in some people, right? Now, anecdotally, there are lots of stories, and I can tell the story of just my family just the other day. I bought some, my daughter really loves fruits, fine. I bought some pears because pears are coming into season, but these were the kind of hard, crunchy pears. It was a lot of fiber. And we're not really used to having that much fiber in the diet. So my daughter complained there was blood in the stool, and there was, she was also having some constipation issues. And we figured out it was just this pair. And we stopped that pair. We didn't buy that pair again. And the constipation went away. The problems went away with her gut, right? So all that's to say, I don't know why people are eating fiber. I mean, you can do what you want. You can have alcohol, you can smoke cigarettes. I'm not telling you what to do, but don't think that those things are healthy. Like, have a donut, but if you want to, don't have a donut. It would be my preference. But if you must have a donut, have a donut. But don't fool yourself into thinking that it's healthy, right? So we have people who are taking spinach salads, who are taking fruit salads, who are taking fiber supplements, like completely indigestible fiber pills, thinking that they're doing something for their health. And really, the evidence is that they're not. In my own case, I mean, listen, again, it's anecdotal stuff. People are going to doubt it. But when we take fiber out of the diet completely, we find that our health just improves overall. Energy levels improve. Um, you know, all kinds of things improve. Gut health certainly improves. So, indigestible polysaccharides. Why do you want that to be part of your diet? Why on earth? What is the justification for that? It's not good for you. It's not good for your gut microbiome. And I think poor Phil, not Phil, Phil, poor Stephen's mother, who died about 40 years ago, I believe. She's a story of people just getting really bad medical advice that has no evidence. If you're going to recommend something as a practitioner, as a doctor, as a healthcare provider, whatever you recommend, you have to be sure that it's better than doing no harm. And based on Stephen's story, Stephen certainly thinks, and I certainly think that the doctors really harmed this person and may have taken her to an early grave. So anyway, that's some more food for thought. Tell me, have you tried more fiber, less fiber? What's going on in your life? Again, I think it's a scam. Like I think we're just being told to buy these expensive vegetables. I can remember my dad buying something called hikima and like Asian pears and like I don't know weird things that were supposedly very rich in specific kinds of fiber. I think it's all just a big scam. Okay, let me know what you think. I'd love to hear your comments in the below. Thanks, and I'll see you tomorrow. Cheers.